Good morning, Connection Point Church. It's Pastor Malorri coming with your Midweek Moment for February the 3rd. We have made it into the second month of 2021. You're still surviving. I want to address probably the most frequently asked question to me or our other pastors on the pastoral team. Frequently, we have people come up and say, what do I do and then they describe a big, long situation, give us normally way too many details that we don't really need to know. But bottom line, they're asking, what do I do? How do I know how to be faithful in the midst of this question? First of all, I want to say if you have been one of those people, and I've been one of those people, I want to say that's a great question. That means you're seeking God's face. You're realizing that this life is maybe a little bit more complicated and complex than you can figure out on your own strength. That puts you in a great position as a disciple because you're saying, Lord, I need help. I want to applaud you for that. And I want to offer 3 maybe simple but complex answers to that question today. What do you do? I'm going to say, first of all, go to prayer. I know that seems really simple, and it seems like a kind of Sunday school answer, but I mean it. Go to prayer. That means don't just talk, don't just whine and dump out your stuff to the Lord like he is a fortune teller or vending machine. But going to prayer actually means listening as well. You're going to be hearing about in the next few weeks about a prayer retreat center up the mountain in Volcano called This Holy Ground. That's a great place where you can be still, be quiet, to pray. But find a space somehow, somewhere in the midst of your day, in the midst of your life, to stop and listen. Say, God, what do I do? And then just be still. You may not hear anything directly, but you may hear something directly. The Lord does want to speak to us right here, right now. So that's the first simple answer. Second simple answer, go to Scripture. But here's the kicker, without assuming that you know the answer that you're looking for. Sometimes when someone comes up to the pastors with this question, what do I do? They're really just wanting confirmation of what they already know that they want to do, and they just want to hear someone else say the same thing. That's called confirmation bias, and we often do that with going to Google. Have you done this before? You're like, what should I do with blah, blah, blah? And you put it in Google, and you find 3 different websites that confirm what you already wanted to do. Or if you're real tricky, you find the opposite of what you want to do, and you leave more confused. Have you ever thought about how that situation can happen even as we read Scripture? It sounds simple to just say, go to prayer, go to Scripture. But have you ever thought about the amount of holy and unholy behavior that is demonstrated in Scripture? If you're saying, I want to know how to be faithful in my marriage, or I want to know how to be faithful in my job, you could flip over to Genesis chapter 9 and you see Noah be so obedient in building the ark and going through the flood and doing all the things. And then immediately after that, there's this scene of him getting drunk and naked. Is that what I should do? There's evidence of slavery in Scripture, right? Of the people of God in Genesis, Exodus, the prophets, and the historical books of being slaves, and also in the New Testament of them enslaving people. Think about Ephesians chapter 6. Paul tells them how to treat slaves. Is that what we should do? There's moments of violence and revenge, as we'll encounter in this week's text on Sunday in Esther chapter 8. Yet Jesus so clearly says in Matthew chapter 6 to turn the other cheek and love our enemies. So clearly we could come to Scripture with confirmation bias, pick and choose Scriptures to justify the behaviors that we want to do. But what is the whole of Scripture telling us? What is all of Scripture telling us together cohesively? That's how we should go to Scripture. I would also implore you to fast like we've seen in the book of Esther, to truly seek God's face, to not try and twist God's arm by saying, I'm not going to eat until you tell me the answer. But it's putting ourselves in a position to say, I'm laying down all of my desires, Lord. Form me to know what to do. In this week's passage in Esther chapter 8, we're going to ask some big questions. Is this behavior we encounter holy? I'd invite you to read that passage ahead of time. The following Sunday, we're going to finish out the book of Esther in chapters 9 through 10, and then we'll be heading into the season of Lent. So we're winding down in Esther. But maybe there's a little bit of caution this Sunday. It's Ohana Sunday, so our keiki are going to be in with us, and there's some big stuff in this passage. So parents, I leave that up to your discretion. But in all reality, as a pastor, I don't want to be a church that we bury our head in the sand about tough things. I want to prepare us all, keiki, teens, adults, to be disciples in this world that is complex. There's hard things we face. So, as you seek God's face for all your what should I do's this week, may you pray, may you read scripture, and may you fast. And may you know that God has demonstrated what to do in the birth, life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the same Spirit that raised him from the grave is ready to speak to us and guide us to what to do this week. Let's listen and receive and be ready to gather back together again this Sunday at 10:30. I hope to see you there. Aloha, church.